if anyone has heard of me, you've probably heard of me as the Burger Lady, which is a great title, and I should think about the content of my talks and how it's going to stick as my legacy as I go on. But yeah, I'm going to do a quick talk today, and we're going to do a bit of an activity which hopefully will be fun. I'm going to, despite the IT challenges, I'm going to try and share video with sound in this talk, so that will be fun, but that should make things go a little bit quicker and be a bit more broken up than just sitting looking at a screen and listening to me. If people are happy to, which is lovely, there's quite a few faces on camera, like that helps me if I can see your faces, so please do feel free to sit on camera if you're happy to do so. As Mark said, questions at any point, drop them in the chat. Use the raise hand function if people are aware. So if you click on your participants, it should give you an option to raise your hand, and Claire's going to be my glamorous assistant and point out if we've got any questions as we go through. So besides the kind of regular blurb, I like to do like a bit of a different blurb about who I am and what I do. And I always start a bit of an intro to me of saying kind of how when I was younger, I always wanted to be Mel Gibson out of What Women Want. People have seen the film. I'm looking at my faces now to see if anyone's seen that film. It's a bit of a, like, I've not watched it in absolute years actually, but in the film he basically writes like logos and the cool like strap lines for adverts and things, and I really liked that, and I thought, oh, it's such a cool creative job, like I'd be really good at that. I want to do that. But then I kind of quickly realized that actually words are probably not my forte. I'm like quite dyslexic, so it probably wouldn't be ideal for me to try and, you know, go off and study English or something at university. So I realized that actually I prefer numbers. So this realization partly came from watching Countdown, and I always much preferred the number round to the words round on Countdown. I don't know if anyone else preferred the numbers round. Give me a thumbs up. People know how to do a thumbs up if you're a numbers Countdown numbers fan. I don't watch Countdown anymore now. We all obviously work all the time. But yeah, I realized actually I was much more into numbers, and this kind of came to me that quite uniquely for the people I was around at the time, kind of were both equally logical and creative, and I wasn't sure where these two worlds came together. It's something called kind of a diagonal thinker in an advertising world, where you're equal parts creative and logical, and you can kind of live in both realms and bring them together. And that's where I kind of stumbled upon initially kind of statistics. So I used to be a statistician, and then I became a data scientist. And this whole idea of kind of discovery and problem solving and being inquisitive, but actually doing logical things with that inquisition, and playing around with numbers and code was what I really enjoyed doing. And that's kind of where my focus is now. So as Mark said, I'm now kind of head of operations, and a lot of my role is being the translator, I like to call it, between our really technical people and the rest of the world. So how do I translate all the wonderful things they do and make it accessible and make it have the maximum value it can have? And that's what this talk today is all around, how to make analysis accessible and make it have the maximum impact. So, because I said I'm going to do videos, I'm going to play a short video to test that sound works, fingers crossed, and then we're going to jump into the proper bit of the presentation. Can people hear that?
You can stand in front of a mirror.
Good volume?
Run.
Yes.
Road will think of your outfit. You don't have to listen to its jokes and pretend they're funny in order to run on it. It would not be easier to run if you dressed sexier. The road doesn't notice if you're not wearing lipstick. It does not care how old you are. You do not feel uncomfortable because you make no money on the road. And you can call on the road whenever you feel like it, whether it's been a day or even a couple of hours since your last day. The only thing the road cares about is that you paid a visit once in a while. Nike. No games, just sports.
So that's actually a clip from what women want, and it is like kind of relevant, some of the stuff we come on to, and I just quite like it. I think it's quite a nice little little intro, and people are probably running all the time now, we're in lockdown. But getting into the kind of the meat of my topic today. So this presentation I'm going to give is called Building the Bun Around the Data Science Burger. And what I'm going to first do is give us a run through of what the burger is, and then we're going to focus on the two pieces of our bun. So a data science burger, or an analytical burger really, all starts with the patty, so the data. So in my burger, this is actually a vegan burger. It's an impossible patty. It's a possible burger. And this is because data in reality is not a nice piece of 100% steak that we just shape, put it through our mincer, but it actually takes a lot of processing often in reality. So to get to that nice patty in our bun, there's a lot of hard work that's gone in there with the data collection, data preparation, data cleaning, before we put anything else on top of it. So we start with our data and our patty, which is a core element. Next, what we might want to do is we might want to put a nice bed of lettuce for our bun and our burger to sit on. And what this lettuce represents is a bit of subject area knowledge and insight. So we take our data, and what we need is we need some of the context to support that data around it to help with the analysis we're going to go on to do. What we next have is we maybe have some exploratory analysis, here represented by a couple of bits of onion. Now this is because we may be in the exploratory analysis are going to look at some different cuts of the data. So, we might take a kind of more wide overview of the data. We might look at some of the trends in the data, some of the patterns we see across variables. And this is kind of the base analysis we do before we kind of get further in. And then what we might do is kind of go a bit more in depth. We might do some analysis that involves a bit more processing. So here we've got some pickled gherkins, everyone's favourite. This might be, a couple of like correlations, again, going further to explore the relationships we've got there, and start to kind of unpick it a bit more. And then what we've got is the cheese. And here I've got it referred to as kind of data science, but actually this is, any kind of advanced analytical technique. Top secret, a lot of data science is just very old analytical techniques rebranded and given a sexy new name. So, all analysis is probably pretty relevant here. But what the cheese represents is kind of something, again, that's maybe got some more processes. So, this might be cheese that's not actually made out of any dairy product, or it might be that plastic cheese, which I personally think is disgusting, which, there's a lot of processes that you've gone through to get that output. We probably, when you get that kind of piece of cheese, if you looked at the ingredients, we don't really know all the things that have gone in, and we don't understand the processes they've gone through to get that nice piece of cheese at the other end of it. And that's often what is the case with our more advanced pieces of analysis. It ends up looking like a nice simple slice of perfectly formed cheese, but to get there, there's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes. And everyone knows this kind of slice of cheese, if you like cheese or fake cheese, is probably what elevates your burger from being a nice burger to being a way better, good cheeseburger. And I hope everyone's like eating their lunch at this point, because, I'm getting nice images of like Five Guys and things, not having had a burger in quite a while. And then what we have finally is our tomatoes. We're going to add a little bit of colour to our burger, make it a bit more visually appealing, give us some health benefits from this healthy burger we're having here. And this represents a data visualization. So this is adding some contrast to the analysis so we can see all the elements quite clearly. We can see what we have within our burger. And this is quite a key piece for somebody eating the burger, to just make it a lot more appealing to have. Some people will take out the tomatoes, but you probably had them in. And this is what I see as the kind of key elements to my analytical burger. You might not have all of them, you might not like gherkins, you might not want your tomatoes, but you will kind of need a basis often of a patty, some extra garnishes on top to really start having that piece of analysis that you then go and share to try and deliver some insights. So we've got a great burger there, but this delightful thing, if anyone was feeling hungry, is what our burger currently looks like. We haven't got the bun around it. And what that means in practice within my analogy is that, it's actually quite hard to eat this burger. So you maybe start eating it and you kind of lose quite a few bits. You end up with a mess all over the floor. Everything's crumbled and you've probably missed a lot of the burger and you've not had the full experience because we've not had a bun to make it accessible. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you've got all the core elements of your analysis, but there's a couple of bits missing that actually make that burger easy to eat and enjoyable to eat for somebody who you're going to be giving your burger to. So in this analogy, we're, the chefs building a burger and all our customers and users are the lucky people who are coming into our virtual restaurant and get to eat our burger. So what actually makes up the bun in this burger? So to start, we've got the base of the bun. And now this is the understanding of the problem and building a solution. So we want to form a good base to build our burger upon. And we want to be able to put this all together on this kind of solid base of understanding of both the problem, but also what the solution could be. I've done a lot of bread baking in lockdown, like many people. Actually baked my first sourdough this weekend, quite behind on the trend. Might not do one again because it's a lot of work. But actually that piece of making bread is a bit like the process of understanding the problem and building a solution. There's a lot of steps that go into it. There's some key ingredients. But if you follow it, you get a really good base to build our burger upon. And if you get your bread recipe wrong, you're still going to have a base, but it might take away a bit of the enjoyment. Someone might not finish it because it just isn't quite there. And then we've got the top of our burger. So this is our burger bun on top, and this is the presentation and communication of the work. So to make it fully accessible, you want someone to be able to get a good grip on their bun. And this is what they're going to see when they come and look at your analysis. Your nice, potentially sesame seeded, maybe slightly toasted brioche burger top. And this is what's going to make them want to kind of bite in to your burger. And in our sense, kind of what's going to make them want to understand the analysis you've delivered and make it accessible for them to kind of come and try and do that understanding piece. So these are the kind of two elements that we're really going to focus in on today. So understanding the problem and building a solution, and presenting and communicating the work. Now, sadly, this is kind of the bit of the presentation where the burger will disappear from now on in, and we'll get onto the real meaty stuff. But what I always think is quite important to reflect on here, that in an ideal world, perhaps, or the one that you read about in all the textbooks, we probably wouldn't have one person doing all of these elements. In your kitchen, you'd probably have different chefs making different bits, and it all comes together at the end. But more often than not, we don't, as analysts, work in a nice multidisciplinary team, and we don't have all that spare capacity for people to be doing some of them supporting roles. So what you probably find is we have to do a bit of all of this, and these are soft skills that, as an analyst in this environment, we need to kind of build and have. I don't know if people probably feel the same for where you guys all work, but for me, I think it's a bit of a luxury to have somebody else who does that hard stuff at the beginning and at the end, and we just get to do all the fun sat behind the computer screen playing with data work. So that's where we are. And you might think, I hope you're thinking, actually, that's a really good analogy. Though it did start off as a better analogy, which I'll tell you at the end if we have time, but it was not seen as appropriate. But hopefully, that makes sense, and you can see kind of how that picture comes together. But, beyond being a good analogy, why do I think these two soft elements are kind of really important? And there's two reasons that I want to look at before we kind of go into some of the techniques to be able to do that kind of framing of the problem and then the presentation of the solution. And now the first of these is looking at this from a kind of job perspective. So this is a slightly out of date slide, but I've not had a chance to kind of refresh it, which shows, looking kind of specifically at the minute in data science jobs, the fifth most kind of required sought after skill was communication. So this comes before a lot of these fancy techniques you might have heard of that people think is the bread and butter of what data scientists do. And you also notice in there that you've got a kind of project management piece as well. But, you know, this is relevant to both the piece, obviously, on kind of how we present and communicate our work, but also on the base of the bun in terms of how we actually understand a problem, because this is all built upon how we communicate with our stakeholders, with our customers, with our users. So yeah, it's seen in job adverts. And then another one which is closer to home, and when I Google this, it said it's like Kent and Essex Police. I don't know if that is factually correct, but this is a job ad I was able to find that's live at the moment for an assistant analyst in Kent and Essex Police, and just pulling out a couple of the behaviours that it points to in there. So being able to analyse critically, which means, you know, solving problems proactively by understanding the reasons behind them, using learning from evidence and experiences to take action. So again, this kind of points to the piece of, you know, understanding the problem before we build the solution. And then there's another piece around like innovative and being open-minded, alongside another piece that was called out, I think it was under public service, around seeking to understand the needs of others and act in their best interests, which again, you know, talks to those kind of softer skill sets. And I think you possibly all recognise that, you know, when we're applying for jobs like the ones we have, you know, it does pull out the soft skills and has them quite high up on the list of requirements alongside the more technical analytical skills as well. And the other piece in this, that it's not only something that people require in jobs, but again, it's something that comes out as an area that people find challenging, so that analysts find difficult to do. So again, this is from a Kaggle survey back in 2017. And I've looked again, it still holds true, but using this as kind of a nice initial source. This highlights the fourth biggest challenge that data professionals have faced as a lack of a clear question to be answering or a clear direction to go in with the available data. Alongside in, I think they're like 6th and 7th most, data science results not being used by business decision makers and explaining data science to others. So you've got at the front that number 4 there, that's all around our understanding a problem and having a kind of clear idea of what we want to do when we're building a solution upon it. And then these two here you've also got, which are kind of pulling out that presenting and communicating it. You know, if we're really like honest with ourselves, often when things are not used by business decision makers, it is partially to do with how, you know, how convincing, compelling, how well we've been able to put across the work we've done and the value within it, as well as them, you know, just deciding there's something else that should be done. And as well as that idea of explaining data science or, you know, analysis to other people. Just a quick like pause for reflection. I've not looked in the chat. Do people kind of agree with this idea that those elements are quite challenging? So kind of that idea of having a clear ask to work upon, but also, you know, communicating the work you've done, especially if it's slightly more complex analysis. I don't know, give me a symbol or a chat message, please. And people are allowed to speak if people feel comfortable speaking up, but I know it's difficult in a big virtual meeting. Yeah, hopefully those kind of resonate with people.
In our organisation, there's kind of people find it really hard to articulate what the problem is, and kind of, I guess sometimes we have to help them to do that, but you can kind of go around in this vicious circle of kind of not really knowing what you're trying to do, and kind of as much as, you know, dirty data is at the top there in terms of, you know, crap in and crap out, excuse my language, I think kind of you have to be clear about what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, which is kind of some of the bits that kind of echo in that.
Yeah, I find a lot with stakeholders that come to us to ask questions, what they're asking for is often within the remit of their understanding of what analysis is. And I think that is sometimes not a true reflection of what we're able to do. So the kind of requests that we get are not quite there.
Yeah, bro. I think the other thing that I was finding interested in, like dirty data, yes, it's a problem. It's probably always going to be a problem, and it's probably a problem that I'd love to think, you know, we're in positions to solve. but it's a difficult one to solve. Whereas some of these other issues are maybe slightly more within our gift and our area of influence to do something around. So it's kind of that thing of, where do you place your time and effort? Is it on the really big difficult thing that you're going to make a tiny amount of impact on chipping away, or is it on something where you might have much more kind of results in that area? So then just a kind of the final bit in this sense around the why. So this is a big spiel about the fourth industrial revolution. I get quite excited about the way that we're going into this new industrial revolution, all the excitement about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and robots are going to take over everyone's jobs, and the whole world's going to change and be completely radical in a few years. We're all going to have chips in our brain and not actually do anything anymore, or we're going to live in a complete virtual reality, which we're halfway there to doing already. But this report by the World Economic Forum, which was published in late 2018, kind of sets out what they think is going to happen in the fourth industrial revolution. And as I say, it talks about a lot of these really highly technical things that are going to happen and going to have a real impact upon the world of work, but also going to have an impact upon what are the skill sets needed to thrive. And why I highlight this, because what's really interesting is that if you look here from 2015, where they did their baseline, to this year, which was their future at that point, which of the skills have kind of moved in this space. So you see there that critical thinking and complex problem solving, stays at the top, but creativity has moved up. And if you look down this, what you notice is so many of these are, what we'd maybe call softer skills. They're around, being creative in how we solve problems, how we present, how we interact with people. And I think given this shift to things that are going to become more and more technical, it's so interesting that the top skills are still, around how we interact, how we converse with people, and how we approach and solve problems. So this is my kind of background for trying to convince people why this is as important as the technical stuff. Which kind of takes me nicely to another kind of quick detour into kind of learning and development. So I've just set out how, it's up there in terms of what people are looking for when hiring new people into analytical jobs. It's an area that people in the analytical job say is quite challenging, but what do we actually do about it ourselves from an L&D perspective? Now, what I find in every team I've worked in, there's a lot of L&D, but L&D is always about the technical stuff. People always want to learn about the new analytical techniques. They want to learn about the new thing that everyone's doing, being kind of like text analysis is what's next, or they want to learn about how they can do things in a more efficient way. They want to learn more about doing coding instead of having to manually do everything. And that's great. There's a place for that. This is a very fast-moving area, and it's very difficult, and you always need to kind of keep on top of things and keep on top of our skills. But I question, what do we do in the softer side of things? So people probably have a good idea and have a good approach for when you're trying to improve your technical skills and do some technical L&D. But what do we do when we're looking at softer stuff? So the question I put to people is twofold: of how often do you actually spend your L&D time looking at softer skills, but then also what do you do to try and improve softer skills? So one of the key things, with people often will say, I want to be better at my presentation skills. And what they do is they'll go, okay, how to get better at presenting? I just got to keep doing it again and again and again, and I'll get better. Now, if I keep doing the same thing lots of times without any external intervention, I'm probably not going to get that much better, unless it's a real clear task where there's a clear feedback loop of, if I'm trying to play football and every time I kick the ball with my outside foot, it goes wildly off to the left. But if I kick it with my inside foot, it works. Then I'm like, this is what I need to be doing different. But often if you kept presenting and you're not getting any outside input, you're probably not going to actually move like what you're doing that much. It's probably going to be doing the same thing again and again. But if we thought about this in terms of we were learning a new analytical thing, where we probably start is we go and look at the experts You know, we go and find maybe some research papers, or we go and follow a course where we get taught by someone what to do it. You know, we go and we approach, you know, somebody who has more expertise in that area, and we try and like follow and adapt and learn from what they're doing. And I put the challenge of kind of, why don't we do the same with some of our softer skills? So my kind of ask of you, and again, if you indulge me with a little bit of interaction so I can stop talking for a second, is what do you guys do in terms of your learning and development of slightly softer skills? Do you see it as something that's important? Is it on your list of things to do? And does anything of what I've just said above kind of hold true, or has someone got some top secrets to me of how to do some soft skills L&D?
I think for me at ECC, for our data analytics team, we obviously, I think we do think it's important, both of those kind of elements, both parts of the bun. But realistically, most of the training has always historically been on those more technical skills and the harder skills, like you say. I think this year we're trying to really focus upon our insight and storytelling skills and on our problem identification skills. But that's kind of a new thing for us, I think. I think we've done bits and pieces in the past, but even when I think back to how we talk about communicating analysis in the past and the training that we've done, it's always been around the technical skills around data visualization, for example, rather than any particular training on how to present well or how to be comfortable in front of an audience, or whatever it might be. So I definitely think it rings true for us.
Any other thoughts from anyone? Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of kind of mentoring and shadowing are really good ways to observe other people.
Something that we've very recently had to do, which felt quite uncomfortable, but some of the managers of my team done it, was get yourself videoed and then play it back and watch it, which is extremely uncomfortable, but you learn a lot from that. Yeah,
I'm not going to watch today's recording. I'll skip the first 10 minutes of me just faffing with IT. No one needs to see that. There's no learnings there.
Make it look slick.
Yeah, just pretend it was completely seamless. That'd be perfect. So hopefully, I think part of the reason that Nikki and others have asked me to come today is to talk about some of these techniques and look at different ways we can improve in this area, and that's what we're going to kind of go on to focus on. So it's like, I'm going to show you a couple of different things we can do and how they work. I'm going to skip this because I've just realised we're quite behind. So the first bit we're going to look at is how we just structure the problem to construct the solution. So this is the base of our button. And something I kind of come back to, which I said in my spiel at the beginning, is I often see the spirit of analysis as discovery. I think people who do analysis are normally quite inquisitive. We don't stop at the first answer. You kind of always want to look underneath and really understand what's going on. Hopefully that resonates with a lot of you. And that's kind of where we're going to look today. So the first technique we're going to look at in terms of understanding the problem is something called root cause analysis. It's probably familiar to a few people. It's a term you might often hear. And what this comes to is to what I think, Emily, it was your point earlier, that often our stakeholders and the people who are asking us to do work don't fully understand what the possibilities are within analytical projects. So they don't know the realm of the possible. So often what they'll do is when they're framing a problem or they're asking for a piece of work, there's a lot of assumptions gone behind, but that won't be explicitly discussed. It's just kind of assumed, and it informs the ask that they give of us. But we also probably do the same. We assume a lot the other way, and we also don't really have that conversation. And what I see kind of this goes to is that as analysts, it's part of our job to kind of guide people through the realm of the possible in terms of what we can do for them and to help them kind of ask the right questions. It's for us to help them understand what they really need and to kind of dig below the superficial level. And this might mean, if we've not got a specific problem, getting them to think about the bigger questions. Sometimes this is kind of like, what keeps you up at night? What are you trying to prove or disprove? you know, what's your gut telling you the problem is? If you had budget to do one thing, you know, what thing would you do? So removing some of the constraints and just saying, actually, you know, what's really happening here? It's not that we can only solve this within this angle, but really what's going on bigger. So if we take a kind of a bit of a scenario, so someone comes and says to us at the moment, I want to know the conditions in place for the second wave of coronavirus so I can monitor when it's about to happen and try to stop it. Now that would be quite a good ask. It's quite clear what they want from us. But probably the ask we get is, I want to predict the next round of COVID. It's a very different question. So what this talks to is getting the scope right and what people come to us with a scope. And this comes down to a theory called Goldilocks problem, which is why we've got our porridge bowls. So often what will be asked in terms of scope is too broad or undefined. So for example, we've been asked to update on the COVID situation at next week's meeting. Can you share some actual insights based on the data? So I'm like, okay, I can go away, look at the data and share what I think is important. So there I've got my assumptions on what I think they want to know. They'll have their assumptions on actually what they want to know. And I can go off when I'm just told, go look at the data, just look for what I'm interested in, rather than what they really need to perhaps know. So I might go, and I wouldn't do this, I don't think any of you would do this because we're all very good analysts, but I could go and look at this bit of data here that I've just pulled off the internet, and I could say, okay, they want to know that things haven't changed, so we don't need to lighten our response. We still need, you know, extra people on the ground to help with this. So I just say to them, well, I've looked at the data and the insights I've got is there's been no fall in the number of daily COVID deaths since 27th of April, with the same number of deaths reported on the 4th of May. You look at the data, that's correct, but I've manipulated what's there to tell the story I want to tell or what I think they want to know. So this is probably not what they want, and it's very much based upon my understanding, the business understanding, and our interpretation to get the right answer. The other end of the spectrum is where things are too narrow or defined. So someone might say to me, you know, I want to know, when will we get the second wave of coronavirus? So my answer to them, I've gone and I've done a really nice complex model. I loved it. I was like, this is a really hard problem that only a really hard solution is going to solve. So I've gone and I've built this beautiful black box. So I've come back and I've said, there's a 75% probability the next coronavirus spike will start between the 1st and 14th of November. Their next question, next word to me is probably going to be, why? And I'm going to say, oh, I don't know. Like, I'd have to go and unpick all my input variables and look at all the different factors against them. You know, which ones are most important? I don't know, but I have told you when it's going to happen. And here is another common thing of they've asked a specific ask, but actually, you know, they've asked me to predict something, whereas what they wanted was the inference behind my prediction. So again, it's not really met the need. But what do we get to be able to find the right scope? And we can spend a lot of time kind of trying to narrow a scope or try to expand the scope. But what we do there is we're always assuming the question is right. The start point is the right problem and the right question to be asking. Really, what we want to do is to make sure we know what the right question is before we start defining the scope. And this comes down to asking questions. So just asking lots of questions. Whenever someone gives you an ask or some work to do, you should probably be going back and asking many questions of, why are we looking at it? What's the question you want to answer? How do you see this being used? You know, what do you think this is going to provide you with? So we can test their understanding. We can make sure we understand their understanding and they match. And then we can kind of start on the journey. And one of the ways we can do this is an idea of starting with why. So always start with the why question. I'm going to skip my fun video. And the way to think of this is that that basically, if you think of a small child, think of a toddler. Anyone who has or has had a child who has been a toddler, they love the question why. So you'll have a conversation, they'll say, we can't go outside, why? It's raining, why? Because water's falling from the clouds. Why is water falling from the clouds? why is that? And that kind of like constant picking away is what we do when we think about the idea of 5 whys, as Nigel's guessed. And this is a really kind of simple approach, but we don't actually use it enough because it feels slightly uncomfortable and a bit silly, perhaps. So the really nice example of this is a case of the Jefferson Memorial. People have heard this example. So park rangers noticed the stone on the memorial was deteriorating, but they weren't sure why. So they started with going, why is the stone deteriorating? Because it's cleaned intensely every 2 weeks. Okay, so we might be able to make a solution at this point, but instead we ask, why is it cleaned so intensely? It's because every 2 weeks it gets covered in bird poo. So they did actually put up nests to keep the birds away, but it didn't really work very well, and it kind of ruined the whole look of the memorial. So instead we asked why again. Why are there so many birds around the monument? Well, there's so many birds because there's so many spiders, and birds like to eat spiders. I don't know what the solution would be to get rid of lots of spiders, but instead they went on and asked another why. Why are there so many spiders in the monument? Well, there's so many spiders because the spiders are eating all the insects, because there's loads of insects. So maybe we get a new team who go around and spray bug spray constantly rather than cleaning. But instead we ask another why of why there's so many insects flying around the monument. And the answer for why there's so many insects is because the insects are attracted to the spotlights that are turned on in the evening to illuminate the monument at night. So what they did was they simply delayed the lights coming on by an hour after sunset. So this led to 90% less insects, and also actually had a big cost saving because they were using less electric. But if they hadn't kind of dug deep to kind of find the root cause, we probably would have put in place a different solution, like change the cleaning routine, which would never have actually fixed the underlying reason, and probably would have cost more money. So hopefully that's quite like a nice, clear example to see how it would work. And the other piece of this is that it's actually not 5 whys. It might be 6 whys. Really, in the literature, you have either 5 whys or 9 whys. I think maybe odd numbers are just secret. But yeah, you can ask multiple whys, but it's about going beyond what we think is the kind of the problem and challenging actually what is the problem. So the next half of this, and we're probably going to be like 10 minutes over, Tom, but I'll just pace through it, is telling a story to achieve maximum impact. Now I'm going to start with a short video because we're all bored of hearing me talk. So just quickly watch.
Let's become a knowledge sharing organization. I thought it was a pretty good idea, so I set out to persuade my colleagues, let's become a knowledge sharing organization. And my colleagues had a very clear answer for me. They said, Steve, this is the World Bank. We're a bank. We lend money, pays your salary, keep your eye on the ball. We're a lending organization. Didn't seem to work too well. I gave them reasons. They didn't listen. I showed them slides. They took days. And I was a desperate man until one day I stumbled on something else. I'll be talking about the future, and the future of the World Bank and what's it going to be like. Well, I said it's going to be like today. Let me tell you about something that happened just a few months ago. In June 1995, this is still in early 1996, in June 1995, a health worker in a little village in Zambia in Africa logged onto the website for the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, and got the answer to a question on how to treat malaria. Now that was June 1995, not June 2015. It wasn't the capital of Zambia, little place 600 kilometers away. And this is not a rich country, this is Zambia, one of the poorest countries in the world. But you know the most important part of this picture for us in the World Bank? The World Bank is not in this picture. The World Bank does not have its knowledge organized to share with all the millions of people who make decisions about poverty. But just imagine if it was. Just imagine if we got organized. Think what an organization we could become.
So what this tailors is, it's a story from David J.P. Phillips as part of a TED Talk, and links are at the end of the slides. And what he's given an example there of how you tell a successful story. And in that example, which I actually really like now, I've heard it too many times, is there's 4 rules: truthful, positive, minimal, and contrasting. So these are the 4 rules of telling a successful story. Truthful. 700 happy passengers reached New York after the Titanic's maiden voyage. That statement is factually correct. 700 people reached New York after the Titanic's maiden voyage. They were happy because they weren't dead. They didn't reach New York when they thought they were going to reach New York, and they probably lost a lot of their family. But on a factual basis, that's right. So this is not truthful because it's not authentic. You know, if anyone knows anything about that situation, as soon as you hear it, you know it doesn't hold true. You know, you're kind of thinking, oh, that's not what I've heard about the Titanic. So to be truthful, it needs to be both factual and authentic. And a good place to find out and to see where things are maybe factual and not authentic is, you know, listen to politicians in the news, and you'll see there's a close line between when things are authentic or not. The next one is it has to be positive. So a lot of people often, when you're trying to convince people, especially to do things better, you'd be like, oh, this is like how at the minute it's terrible. It's so bad at the moment and I'm going to fix it. You know, it's not actually that compelling, and it doesn't trigger the right emotions when you're being negative. And the best way I describe this, I went to a great conference a couple of years ago called What the Expletive Conference. And this was all about ranting for something, not just against it. So the whole premise of the conference was to go and rant about things that don't work in a digital space. So everyone can imagine there's a lot of stuff you could say there. But one of the rules was you had to be for something. You couldn't just stand and be like, get all your negativity out. You had to turn it into a positive direction. And this is quite powerful because the idea is if you're negative, people are not with you, you're kind of actually making people less open and kind of buying into what you're saying, especially if you think in our situations, often we might be talking to stakeholders who've actually, you know, have had a thing to say in the current situation and, you know, how the world is now. So telling them it's terrible is probably not going to get you in the good books. And then the next piece, which is my favourite piece, is being minimal. So this is a wonderful idea, and it's around occupying the little voice in their head. Now, I learned this the other day that not everyone has a little voice in their head, and I feel really bad for people who don't. So some of you might be thinking, what utter nonsense is she talking about? But when you read that, there's probably like a second dialogue that you're having with yourself in your mind, which is kind of distracted by all the like other things going on. So maybe when we started this talk, you were more distracted by all the things in my background than you were in all the IT issues we were having. And the idea when you're telling a story is you want to be minimal in terms of you give them enough detail that they start to build a picture, but that you leave some significant bits out so that their imagination is joining the dots. Now, why this works is because it activates a different part of your brain, your called cortex brain, and it's giving that something to do. So you'll notice in the video we watched, he told us quite a bit about Zambia, and you may have started to picture what it's like in Zambia, where someone's able to go and look up online and find this piece of information. And it's giving them little snippets that make you think about it, but leaving you going and then figuring it out. I think I saw the Reddit thread, which was where the revelation about people not having voices inside their head came to me. But most people, I think people do, and you can either see words, but you maybe don't make sentences. It's a whole different story. And then the final piece is contrasting. Now this is saying, you know, it's okay to compare the current situation and like maybe some negatives, but you need to balance it out with some positives. So often kind of highlighting the as is a really helpful way to get people more receptive and to think a bit more about the could be scenario. So contrast is okay, but it's important, you know, you have to have that with the positive, which is why you have to have all four elements for this to work really well. There's another example here of a kind of comical way he does it that you can watch, but it's not as good as the first one, and if people want to have a look, you can have a look. Now the next and final technique we're going to have a look at is the golden circle. Now you might have heard of this, so it's by Simon Sinek. He's quite known on the TED scene, but we're going to watch a video again.
If Apple were like
everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh.
So he's given a contrast there of perhaps how what. So the great example is, so if you look at, so Dell, another great brand of kind of people who make tech and computers, they, like Apple, tried to make like the early days kind of like an iPod, like a music player. No one bought it because Dell sell computers. They don't do handheld devices. But Apple sell computers, but we will buy any other piece of tech from Apple, because why we buy them for why rather than for what it is. So it's all around how people the identity. So the three elements of this golden circle is it always starts with the why. So to be able to do this, you have to know why you do what you do. If you don't know why you do what you do, you won't be able to convince anyone else. So you have to understand the why behind what we're doing, which I think hopefully in kind of our area of work of public sector is there's quite a strong why often. Next, you build on top of this a discipline of how. So you have to hold yourself and your people and what you deliver accountable to the values and guiding principles which are built into your why. So people have said, Apple, it's all about minimalism and ease of design and things. Their why is about making people's lives easier. Their how is around seeing through the design and how they go about delivering it. Then the final piece is around having consistency of what. So everything I say, everything I do, everything I produce, then it must prove what I believe. So my why here is just a belief. And what we have is the how is all our actions that we take to realise the belief. And the what is the result of these actions, so what we say and what we do. So all it's doing there is it's flipping the normal sales pitch around. So starting with why you need something or why you should use the analysis we're presenting, rather than starting with what we've done and how we've done it. And all these elements are actually linked to this idea we talked about before about being authentic and authenticity. So a why is just a belief. And when people say about being more authentic, what authenticity actually means in this scenario is just that the things you say and the things you do, you actually believe in them. So it's around this idea of like everything you're putting forward, you believe it's the right thing, you believe it works. And if you believe that, then you are actually being authentic in what you're putting forward. So this is kind of like a key when people say be more authentic. What they really mean is actually like believe the things that you're doing and saying, and that puts across an authenticity. So those are our two techniques for kind of telling a story. The 4 rules of a story, which are truthful, positive, minimal, and contrasting. And then starting with a why. So having a really clear why, having a discipline in your how, and then having a considers of your what. So that, and I've stopped a bit through because I'm a bit behind, which is no shock, takes us into our kind of breakout session. And we hopefully have a bit of a chance at the end for some questions and stuff and reflections on the breakout. So as we'd said at the beginning, everyone's already got their predefined group. Tom's got the power of dropping people into a session. And we're going to have 2 sessions. We're all going to be looking at the same question. But 2 of you will be looking at the idea of kind of how we frame the problem. So thinking about starting with why and thinking about the 5 whys. And then the other 2 groups will be thinking about how we do this, our kind of sales pitch. So how we would start with why when we're trying to sell some work, and how we'd kind of tell a good story to get buy-in. So the ask we've got, which I think everyone's seen in advance, is this snappy pitch, which is a bit of the times, which hopefully people are not bored of COVID yet. Bored's probably the wrong word. But COVID's likely to have long-term societal impacts on our residents, communities, economy, and demand for public services. ECDA should help public services to understand who might have exacerbated risks and what unintended consequences may result to help us prepare for the future. So this is the kind of ask You know, we've been asked to understand who might have exacerbated risk and what unintended consequences may result to help us prepare for the future. So the first group is going to think about how we would destructure that problem and construct a solution. So what questions would you ask to help understand the real problem, so to get down to the root cause? And again, thinking about it of asking whys till it feels silly asking whys. And sometimes your whys can splinter off into different roots of why, which might be the case here with a more complex issue. And then the second group will be thinking about telling a story. So how would you frame this to senior leaders to get buy-in using the start with why methods and storytelling principles?
So we will close promptly at 4. So I guess just reflections from the kind of exercise, any kind of specific questions or kind of thoughts that sprung up of doing those kind of manual exercises, focusing on the problem and the influencing your stakeholders.
I think something that was really interesting for us in our group is we were talking about how you make it a compelling case, how you tell the story. And I think what struck us is that to do that, when we were talking about doing the golden circle, starting with why, we needed to actually do the exercise around the problem identification first, because we needed to think about, well, why are we doing this in the first place? So you can't really dive into the golden circle and the storytelling without thinking about why is this important to my audience and what is it that they really need to hear. We spoke a few times about the idea of understanding your audience and what makes them tick, because that helps you to influence them to do the thing we want them to do, or allow us to do the thing we want to do, I suppose. So I think the way the two areas really tally up is really important, and I think that was quite striking in the conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting because our group said the same about the kind of, actually we want to understand our audience and what motivates our audience, even though we were doing the problem identification. So I think, yeah, it is really important that you consider both things early on and also kind of when communicating insights. Does anyone have any specific questions they'd like to kind of stick their hand up and ask to Katie whilst we still have her in the room?
Josie has a hand up.
Ooh.
Mine was actually not a question, it was more just a reflection around the authenticity aspect. So I think it's something that I haven't really spent as much time as I probably should have in the past on that, around how you actually make your analysis authentic. And it's something that does come up quite a lot, where something can be very factually correct, but it just may not resonate with someone in an operational capacity, and so it just doesn't land. So I think it's really helpful to kind of drum that in, and looking at the why you do things does bring you back to actually case studies are usually a good way of showing something, and because they're authentic.
Cool, excellent.
I think just to comment quick, I think that's really interesting, because also the thing that came out in some of the chat at the beginning, which is like a massive common problem, is where you're asked to prove the answer's the answer, when someone said, this is what the analysis is going to tell us, go and make the analysis tell us that. And I think that often really challenges being authentic, because you feel like, well, no, I've not really been asked to do my job properly. I'm being asked to do it to fit, you know, to find the circle that fits the circular shaped hole. So it is difficult to do, but I think it's a good thing to try and keep in your mind of like, how can I, you know, do what they're asking within what they want, but also making sure I feel like it's to a degree authentic. And sometimes that comes to making sure it's got the right degree of rigor, and you know, that you actually are confident and comfortable that the data can get the answer they're looking for. Yeah.
Cool, brilliant. Any last final questions for Katie? We've got probably time for one more if you're quick.
Again, not a question, but a really quick one. I know we've run out of time, but if everyone who's facilitating can just kind of summarise what some of the conversations were, so we can then circulate that to the other groups, I think that would be really helpful.
Do you mean email them and then we'll email them around to everybody?
Yeah.
Yep, we can do that. Cool. So kind of just to kind of close, because we do want to kind of keep to time. Appreciate some people have got meetings and some people want to drink, depending which group you are. I think kind of thank you very much for Katie for coming here and presenting today. I think your analogy about kind of building a data science burger is so important to everything that we do, whether you're an analyst, whether you're a user of the insight, whether you're kind of in that partnership space. the problem identification and the communicating and messages is something that we should all reflect on, kind of how we can kind of deliver that better. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to do some of that in practice, and kind of lots of skills and techniques that you can kind of take away for further thought and further consideration. So it's a kind of massive thank you to Katie and to the ECTA team, Claire and Emma, for kind of organising the Be Part of the Equation event. Just to kind of think about reflecting on kind of what's in it for you, and I am trying to flip my message. It's 3 key things that we've recently delivered. We've got some really kind of amazing deliverable products. So on our open data website, we've just delivered our physical inactivities dashboard. It's been delivered by Emma Farrow, who's in the meeting here today, and Jevin in our team. There's some really good interactive insights in there that helps you to target your interventions at community level, where there's likely to be physically inactive people. So kind of check that out. You'll see some cool new kind of dashboards that you can either deliver as a partnership with ECTA or kind of use as insights. We do have a new data sharing platform, so you can share data with your partners in a much more efficient way than you've ever done before. So take advantage of that and speak to ECTA around it. And then thirdly, the University of Essex have recently launched a Masters in Social Data Science in collaboration with ECTA, which will start this autumn. So kind of many more kind of learning and development opportunities that you can take advantage of if you be part of the equation. So on that to do, I've given you 1 minute free. So if you do think of any other topics that you'd like to explore as part of a Be Part of the Equation event in the future, then please do drop myself, Claire or Emma a line, and we will kind of continue to plan the next event shortly. Thank you all very much and have a lovely afternoon / evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, everyone.